Well, thank you very much. We've had a lot of very big news and some very good news today, but I'd like to hold this for China. There's nothing bigger than what we're doing with China. I think it's important that these are the questions that are asked. And as you know, we have the Vice Premier of China, one of the most respected men in all of China and the world, for that matter. We have great respect for him and great friendship with him. And we've come to a very substantial Phase 1 deal. And I'll go through some of the points, and then I'll ask the Vice Premier to say a few words and any comments that he may have. We've come to a deal pretty much subject to getting it written. It'll take probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or 5 weeks. As you know, we're going to be in Chile together at the big summit, and maybe it'll be then, or maybe it'll be sometime around then. But we've come to a deal on intellectual property, financial services, a tremendous deal for the farmers, a purchase of from $40 to $50 billion worth of agricultural products. To show you how big that is, that would be 2.5, 3 times what China had purchased at its highest point thus far. So they were purchasing 16 or 17 billion at the highest point, and that'll be brought up to 40 billion to 50 billion. So I'd suggest the farmers have to go and immediately buy more land and get bigger tractors. They'll be available at John Deere and a lot of other great distributors. But we're taking the purchase of agricultural products from 40 to 50 billion, meaning in that neighborhood from 40 to 50 approximately billion. And what they've been doing now, I believe, is about 8 billion, right? 8, right now it's 8. The other thing I will say is over the last 2 weeks, a lot of purchases have started going back to our farmers. And you've been doing a lot of business with us, which we appreciate very much. But it really started a few weeks ago. But they intend to go up ultimately, once the agreement is signed, from 40 to 50 billion. And that really that was from a base of probably 16 billion. And right now it's 8 billion. And the 8 billion was lower than 8 billion. They got up to 8 billion because they've been purchasing quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. So we also have the agricultural structural issues. We have some incredible progress on the structure and structural issues. And Bob, perhaps you could discuss that, please, on agriculture and explain the importance of the structural issues that we've solved.
Well, I would say probably at least as important as the purchases is the fact that we've corrected a variety of SPS, what we call sanitary, phytosanitary issues that we've corrected, biotechnology issues, and it will be much easier now for American farmers to be able to ship to China, and we've made some corrections on our side too that will help the Chinese side.
And that's been completed and pretty much done.
That's correct.
Another big issue that we've come to conclusion on is currency, foreign exchange. And Steve, do you want to explain that, please?
Well, we've had very good discussions with Governor Yi, the head of the People's Bank of China, their central bank. We've also had extensive discussions on financial services, opening up their markets to our financial services firms. So we have pretty much almost a complete agreement on both those issues. And as you know, Mr. President, currency has been a very big concern of yours since the campaign. And we have an agreement around transparency into the foreign exchange markets and free markets, so we're very pleased with that.
We've also made very good progress on technology transfer, and we'll put some of technology transfer in Phase 1. Phase 2 will start negotiations almost immediately after we've concluded Phase 1 and papered it. And I think Phase 1 should happen pretty quickly. So you have intellectual property. We have an agreement on intellectual property. Financial services, the banks and all of the financial services companies will be very, very happy with what we've been able to get. And I think China's going to be very happy because they'll be served very well by these great institutions being able to go into China. and it's going to be a tremendous thing for banks and for financial service companies. Agricultural, structural issues, tremendous for the farmers. As Steve said, that's almost as good as, which I disagree with him on that, but it's almost as good as going from 8 billion and then to 16 billion, which was their all-time high, to 40 to 50 billion. So we're going to be up to 40 to 50 billion dollars of agricultural purchases, which means the farmers are going to have to work a lot of overtime to produce that much. That's the largest order in the history of agriculture, by far, by 2.5 times. And technology transfer, we'll have some technology transfer in the agreement, but technology transfer will largely be done here and also in phase 2. So we're going to start negotiating phase 2 after phase 1 is completed and signed. And then there may be a phase 3, or we may get it done in phase 2. So you'll either have 2 phases or 3 phases. So we're very happy with it. We have great respect for China, great respect for President Xi. And I want to just tell you that I watched the 70th anniversary in great detail, and it was an incredible event, and congratulations on the 70th, everyone. That was really something very amazing to watch. Mr. Lighthizer has done a terrific job. All of my team, I think, has done a fantastic job. The Vice Premier, I want to just thank you very much for being here with your team. You're very tough negotiators. Congratulations. But it's something that we both realized right from the beginning is very important, not only for China, not only for the U.S., but for the world. And every time there's a little bad news, the market would go down incredibly. Every time there was a little bit of good news, the market would go up incredibly. And yet other news that was also very big, the market just didn't really care. They just seemed to care about the deal with the USA and China, and that's okay with me. So we've had a tremendous, really negotiation, a very complex negotiation, but something that's going to be great for both countries. And Mr. Vice Premier, would you like to say something?
代表中国政府对特朗普总统在国庆节对中国表示70周年表示祝贺，表示衷心的感谢。
Firstly, on behalf of the Chinese government, we would like to extend our thanks to President Trump for your congratulatory message to the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China.
我们非常同意，中美解决好贸易关系，有利于中国，有利于美国，有利于世界。现在呢，我们已经正在向非常正面的方向走着，取得了很大的进展。
We very much agree that to get the China-US economic relationship right is something that is good for China, for the United States, and for the whole world. And we are making a lot of progress towards a positive direction.
这2天呢，我和莱特希特大使穆德金台长进行了非常好的沟通。我们在诸多领域，像刚才总统先生说的这些领域，取得了一些实质性的进展，我们感到非常高兴。
Over the recent days, I have had very good communication with both Ambassador Lighthizer and Secretary Mnuchin. And Mr. President, as you just mentioned, we have made substantial progress in many fields. We are happy about it.
我们将继续努力。
We'll continue to make efforts.
感谢总统先生给我发言的机会，
And thank
中国的
you
同事都非常高兴。
for this opportunity for me to speak up, and all my colleagues are happy about it.
Well, thank you very much, and it's a great honor. I think that the currency foreign exchange agreement that we made will be of tremendous benefit, both in terms of the magnitude of it and in terms of the simplicity of what we're able to do. It'll make a very complicated process much simpler. I think that in itself, I just see as something that we've all been working for. Yes, please.
All President, you, do you mind I ask my interpreter assistant to read the letter to you?
Well, thank you very much. Could I see that? That'd be
Of course, yes.
That's very nice. Thank you very much.
a page in
Yes.
English version.
Oh,
Do you mind interpreter to read it?
yes, this is for guys like John, that aren't good with Chinese. They'll have that magnified so fast your head will spin. Well, it's a tremendous message, and thank you very much. And I've read this, and I appreciate it very much. This is from President Xi,
Yes, exactly.
and we knew that we were going to have a very successful phase one, and it took us a long time to get here, but it's something that's going to be great for China and great for the USA, and we appreciate it very much. And please congratulate President Xi. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. President, Mr. President, I just want to clarify on the tariffs.
Please.
So I was just going to clarify, the Vice Premier has requested and the President has approved. While we go through a process of documenting this, we will not be implementing the increase of tariffs that were scheduled to go in place from 25 to 30%.
The ones that were supposed to go into place on Tuesday next week.
That's correct. That's correct. Those will
Mr.
be
President,
deferred while we.
Including the other ones.
Yes.
Mr. President, are we now closer to a complete end of this trade war? Do you have a timetable in mind?
Yeah, I think we're very close. I think this is a very important phase. A lot of things are here. Our agriculture will be completed because when we bring it up to $50 billion, I project is going to be the number. I don't know that there's a question as to whether or not our farmers can produce that much, and I think they can, but they're literally, and I said it jokingly, I think I mean it, they're going to have to buy more land, which is okay. Be a good time to own land in Iowa, Nebraska, and a lot of other great states. So they're very happy about it. But we're taking it from 8 billion, which it is now, and it was about 2 or 3 billion. They got down pretty low. But if you take the highest it ever was 16 billion, and we're bringing that to 50 billion. So we're going from 16 to 50. So anywhere between 40 and 50. And that'll start very soon. And they've actually already started purchasing. You've actually started purchasing a lot from the farmers. We just got messages from the Midwest.
Already bought 20 million.
20 billion.
20 million, 20 million
Tons.
tons of
20 million
soybeans.
tons of soybeans.
Already.
Yeah, tremendous amount of soybeans. And that was over the last couple of weeks. We got word of that. You know, we got word. We notice it. It goes quickly because we see a price go up a little bit, right? It's incredible the way the market works. But yes,
$398.
that's right.
Dollar.
That's right.
Mr. President,
How do you see
how can we ensure a deal be enforced, Mr. President?
We're working on enforcement right now, and that's been largely agreed to, and that's one of the things in this agreement. We have an enforcement provision, and they're working out the final aspects of that enforcement position, and I think that's something, Bob, do you want to say something about that?
Sure, so we're going to have a very elaborate consultation process. We have an escalation in various areas so that difficulties can be resolved. Both parties have allocated or have assigned various people, have created a structure under it, and we're down to the final details of what will happen if there's not a resolution, and that's kind of the final issue that we're putting together. But both sides agree it absolutely has to have a workable dispute settlement mechanism, and we're very close to that.
Mr. President, how do you see the U.S.-China relations right now? Do you see what areas U.S. and China can still work together?
Yeah, I think they're great. I think the relationship in certain ways may be better than it's ever been. We've been through a very tough negotiation. There's never been a negotiation like this. In all fairness, I give China tremendous credit because for 25 or 30 years, they've done very well with the U.S. And now we're doing something jointly. We're doing it in a fair manner. I give China credit for what they've done over the last 30 years. Tremendous credit. I don't blame China. I blame the people representing our country. Now we have a deal that I think ultimately is going to be just fantastic for China and fantastic for the United States.
Any progress on talks ongoing? Mr. President,
Clarify, is this an actual deal? or is this progress towards the deal?
No, it's
'Cause
subject to getting everything papered. You have to do it. We've agreed in principle to just about everything I mentioned, all of the different points, and now we're getting it papered. And I don't think it should be a problem getting it papered. I think that China wants it badly, and so we want it also. And we should be able to get that done over the next 4 weeks. We're going to be in Chile in 5 weeks, so we'll see in terms of signing when it happens. We'll do a formal signing with President Xi and myself. But this is just something that's very exciting. And I'm very excited, actually. We cover a lot more territory than agriculture, but I'm very excited for the farmer because there has never been a deal of this magnitude for the American farmer.
Mr. President, a question
You want to talk about the Huawei?
Ms. President,
or Secretary Ross?
I'm sorry, the question is,
Huawei.
in this agreement, we're not dealing specifically with Huawei. It's not part of this agreement. That's a separate process.
Mr.
President,
President,
the negotiation teams
have you
on both sides
advised
of
raised
the
the
business dealings of Hunter Biden with Chinese officials in the
We're going to
last...
discuss where's Hunter. Where is Hunter, by the way? Whatever happened to him? We're going to discuss where's Hunter when I get out because I'll stop at the helicopter. But right now, in respect to China and to the Vice Premier, we're going to only ask questions about
Mr. President, on that point, can you assure the American people that you did not bring up Joe Biden in these negotiations, that you have not brought up that with the
I
Chinese?
have not brought up Joe Biden. China can do whatever they want with respect to the Bidens. China can do whatever they want with respect to $1.5 billion going to somebody. That's up to China. But we do have to look into corruption, but no, it has not been brought up.
Mr. President,
can you comment on
that this deal over the next 3, 4, 5 weeks won't fall apart as it's being papered, and then secondly, that phase
It can happen. I don't think it will. I think we know each other very well. We've been negotiating this for a long time. There's a possibility, of course, that maybe there's something that they're unable to get papered. But I've been doing this for a long time, and the Vice Premier's been doing it for a long time, and many other deals for many, many years, both of us. And his people are very great professionals, and so am I. And I think the likelihood of it falling apart is not so good. What do you think, Steve? What would you say?
I think we have a fundamental understanding on the key issues. We've gone through a significant amount of paper, but there is more work to do. And we will not sign an agreement unless we get and can tell the President that this is on paper. And I know the Vice Premier needs to go back and do some work with his team, but we've made a lot of progress over the last 2 days.
Mr. President, can you comment on the...
And most of this is also known by the people in China, by President Xi. He's been following it very closely.
Mr. President, two teams have been working together for over a year and a half now. Can you comment on the progress and the performances of the teams, of both sides?
Well, I think, are you from China?
Yes, China Media.
I think the people of China have to be very proud of your team. They are unrelenting. I say that in a positive way, but they're unrelenting. They're tough, they're smart, and they have negotiated a great deal. But I think the people of China should be very proud of this team, starting with the Vice Premier. He's a very extraordinary man. We've gotten to know each other well, and everybody on my team respects your team. So I think they've really handled themselves incredibly well.
Mr. President, any chance?
Are the December tariffs also suspended as this process goes on?
Tariffs on the increase from 25% to 30%, that will be suspended. We'll be paying 25%. But we're not increasing it to 30. And then you might want to mention the additional tariff.
The additional tariffs are scheduled into effect, as many of you know, the second half of September. That is scheduled into effect on December the 15th, and the President has not made a final decision on that, but there's plenty of time to make that decision. And that is certainly part of this process that the Chinese are working their way through. So the first one has been suspended. The second one is subject to the President making a final decision, but the way this timing works out, that'll be well in advance of that date.
And we'll be making...
Mr. President, many Chinese students still are welcome in this country. They have difficulty. I mean, many Chinese students have difficulty in this country with their visas.
Students?
Yes, Chinese students.
No. We're going to be very good to Chinese students. Nope. I've heard this question many times before, including from our own security people. We want all the people that want to come over from China. We have the greatest university system in the world, and we're going to keep it that way. And one of the reasons it's great is we have a lot of students from China. Now, we're not going to make it tough. We're going to make it like for everybody else.
Mr. President,
Okay?
any potential for rescinding the
We're
currency?
going to make it. I think that's important. I think, Steve, I think it's very important, Bob. Our universities are available. The world comes in, they use our universities. We have the greatest system in the world. And China's not going to be treated any differently. I think it's important for you to say that to the people of China. Our system is open. People get in based on merit. We have incredible talent coming in from China. They occupy a big space in our universities, and we want to keep it that way. Okay? Because there was false rumors going on that we're going to close the schools to China. That is so false. It's just false.
Mr. President, any chance of
Some technical issue we have already exchanged our opinion.
You've already exchanged,
With
There were reports about canceling of OPT for
One
all
second.
students.
Mr. President, I think you've been very clear in your directive all along through the trade negotiations on your view on the universities. And
Are you going to
we
do
will
anything to
follow.
reassure the students?
Yeah, I can give them my word. I want them coming here. We want the greatest talent in the world coming to our great universities. To Harvard, Yale, Princeton, the great Wharton School of Finance, to Stanford, all of these great schools, we want them coming here. And that's what we have. That's one of the reasons we have the great system. And there have been discussions about that, not by me, because I ended them very quickly. I want to let you know, I end those discussions very quickly.
Mr. President, any potential for dropping, any potential for rescinding the currency manipulation designation?
We'll be making a decision on that and evaluating it, although I would comment that assuming we close the agreement and we have the assurances, that'll be a big step in the right direction for our evaluation.
Mr. President, do you still welcome Chinese business? What about Chinese business? Do you still welcome Chinese business to invest in the U.S.?
We're doing a lot of business with Chinese companies. We do have to be, security companies and certain companies we have to be careful with, and we have to pay very close attention. But we're doing tremendous business with China and with Chinese businesses. It's tailed off. We've tailed it off. We've purposely tailed it off, but that'll start building up very quickly again. We expect that to build up to a much bigger extent, I think, than even before.
When you talk about a big trade deal with China, is this what you envision?
Well, this is phase one, and it's a big part of it. The farmers, the intellectual property, a lot of areas are covered here that frankly are in great shape. Intellectual property, financial services is going to be a massive boon to the banks and credit card companies and all of these companies, including ownership interests. Before you had to do certain things that made it very difficult for banks and institutions to really go into China. China's really been opened up now for the first time to financial services and to the big banks and credit card companies and other types of financial services. So that's a tremendous thing. And I think we have complete agreement on that. Intellectual property, a lot of agreement, but we'll have some of that included in phase two. Agriculture should be done. I don't think the farmers can handle any more than what they're getting. Don't forget, we just signed a big deal with Japan. And that was a very big deal, and a lot of that had to do with agriculture also. So the farmers are doing well. Currency, foreign exchange, we're all set on that. That we've been able to do, and not only through simplification, but the importance of it. It's very important. And technology transfer. So we're going to have some technology transfer here, and some will be in phase two. We think we'll probably be able to conclude it with phase two, but it may be phase two, phase three. Okay?
Mr. President, of doing a phase one. You've been saying as recently as earlier this week that you wanted one big deal. What changed your mind?
It's such a big deal, and it covers so much territory that doing it in sections and phases is, I think, really better. And we're talking about very big. Don't forget, we've covered fully agriculture, even in terms of agricultural structural issues. And then in terms of $50 billion of agriculture, So that will be covered in its entirety. Currency foreign exchange will be covered in entirety. Financial services, I think, will be covered pretty much in its entirety. So the banks and lending institutions, all institutions are covered. Some of technology transfer, a large part of intellectual property will be covered. So I think it actually works out to be a very neat package. And now we can focus on phase 2.
Mr. President, how much time do you allow to go by as this goes through? So you said it might take 4 or 5 or 6 weeks to put it in paper. At what point would you raise tariffs again if you don't have a deal that you can actually sign?
Only good faith and bad faith, and I think we have a lot of good faith right now going on. I think we have.
So no new tariffs in the foreseeable future?
What we're doing is we're going to start, John, right away and getting this papered. Right now it's already partially papered. Much of this has been pretty much completed from the standpoint of paper. But we think it'll take 4 weeks, 5 weeks, something like that. Now, we happen to be together in Chile, so that could be a point or maybe not. President Xi will be there and I'll be there for the big summit.
President, the last time the Vice Premier was in the Oval Office in April, you said a deal at that point was about 4 weeks away. I would love to hear from both of you why this time is different. What's changed in the relationship?
Well, I think we got to know each other a lot better. Don't forget, there's been a lot of back and forth since that happened. We thought we had a deal, and perhaps they didn't. But it didn't work out that way. This deal is a bigger deal than the last deal, relatively speaking. Now, we're talking about big parts of it with financial services and agriculture. But when we talk about $50 billion in agriculture, we never had that in mind in the first deal. We were thinking about 20. We were thinking about anywhere from 16, I would say, to $20 billion. Now we're talking about $50 billion. So this is actually a much bigger deal. It's a big chunk of it, but it's a much bigger deal than we had in mind. Certainly in terms of, I would say, Steve, financial services is bigger and more complete. Intellectual property will be in both phases of the deal. Currency foreign exchange, we didn't really discuss that very much in the last deal. Now we're including it in this deal because a lot of things have happened during the course of the last year that meant it. So I think this is actually, when you add it up, going to be a more important deal, a bigger deal, and more precise.
Mr. Vice President, currency had agreed last spring as well before talks.
Now we have currency. The currency foreign exchange is included. The foreign exchange aspect of it is much more complete now than it would have been under the other system. And don't forget, a lot of things have happened with currency and foreign exchange that we weren't talking about a year ago. Things have happened.
About the summit. You mentioned about the summit. When and where would you like it to be?
Well, we're going to find that out. That'll be up to the Vice Premier and to President Xi. So we'll find that out.
With the global economic slowdown, do you think this kind of win-win will help the?
Well, the United States has been doing very well. China, I think this will be a tremendously positive. This is going to be a tremendous thing for China. We've been doing well, and I think we'll do better. I mean, we've been doing really well. We've been leading the world in many aspects of what we're talking about. I think we'll do even better, and I think China will do tremendously well with this deal. This is a great deal for China. It's a great deal for us.
This is 40 to 50 billion. Is that an annual figure? Will it rise to that figure? Is that over 2 or 3 years?
So, it will scale up to an annual figure, yes.
An annual figure of 40 to 50 billion.
Yes.
Can you say over how long?
Within the second year.
Over the less than 2 years.
In Hong Kong and the Uyghurs want as a big issue in other parts of Capitol Hill, for example. Or is that separate?
We discussed Hong Kong, and I think great progress has been made by China in Hong Kong. And I've been watching, and I actually told the Vice Premier, it really has toned down a lot from the initial days of a number of months ago when I saw a lot of people, and I see far fewer now. And we were discussing it, and I think that's going to take care of itself. I actually think this deal is a great deal for the people of Hong Kong to see what happened. I think this is a very positive thing for Hong Kong. But it really has, it's the escalation, it really has de-escalated a lot from the beginning, and we were discussing this.
Yeah, put a stop on the blacklist of Chinese companies, which seems to be expanding these days.
Well, we'll be looking at the blacklist, and we'll be making a determination as to which companies would be on that list.
Mr. President, if this deal goes forward, helps the economy, economic growth, etc., do you still think that the Federal Reserve needs to cut rates?
Yeah, I do. I think the Federal Reserve should cut rates regardless of this deal, because we're higher than other nations. Germany is loaning money, and when it has to be paid back, they get paid, okay? It's ridiculous. And I think that the Federal Reserve should cut rates regardless of how good this is. We have a great economy, but we have a Federal Reserve that's not in step with the rest of the world. So I think they ought to get in step. And if they were in step, we would, regardless of the China deal is much more important than the interest rates. But because this has to do with more than trade, this has to do with world peace, this has to do with getting along, this has to do with the rest of the world. This isn't just a deal on trade. This has to do with a lot of friction, a lot of bad things that are happening in the world. So this is far more important than the Federal Reserve and interest rates. But the Federal Reserve should cut interest rates, absolutely.
Did you tell them anything about the impeachment process and how that might affect your ability to complete this deal?
Well, I think it's helped me, because yesterday we had the biggest crowd. We broke a stadium record. We broke the record in Minnesota. Nobody's ever seen anything like that, and you saw it, and you understand it too. And my poll numbers are going way up. And so the impeachment, it's a hoax. No, we didn't discuss it, but I would tell it's a hoax. It's a hoax done by people that are losing, and they want to try and use it to win an election. And I don't think it's going to happen. And I don't think China believes it's going to happen, because if they did, they'd rather deal with a sleepy Joe Biden who's failing badly. He's not going to make it anyway. But whoever does emerge on the other side, they'd probably be better off maybe waiting. But they also know that when I win, the deal gets even tougher. It gets even tougher. And they expect that I'm going to win. Otherwise, they wouldn't sign the deal. It's very simple.
Mr. President,
Next.
will there be more putting tariffs out?
I do like tariffs.
What's your inclination then about December?
I think that we're going to have a deal that's a great deal, that's beyond tariffs. This is a deal that's a very important deal for China, very important deal for the world, very important deal for the United States. I think this is a deal that's beyond tariffs. I really mean that. I think that world peace, there was a lot of friction between the United States and China. And now it's a love fest. That's a good thing. But that's good for China, and it's good for us, but it's good for the world. The Vice Premier said the same thing, and he said it better than anybody could have said it. He said, this is a great thing for the world. He didn't say China or us. He said, this is a great thing for the world, and he's absolutely right. Perhaps you'd like to comment on that.
I totally agree with you. It's good for China, it's good for U.S., but it's good, also good for the whole world.
The whole world is watching.
Yes, whole world is watching.
And it is amazing, and I said.
Not only a peace issue,
yes,
but not only a trade issue. It provides peace and prosperity and development for the whole world. I think it's very, very important.
It's a peace and prosperity for the whole world. So it's beyond a trade deal. It really is. And, the talk was getting tough. Rhetoric was getting tough. We have ships and they have ships, and we have planes and they have planes. And, bad things can happen. Stupid things can happen. But this is a great thing that's taken place. We have a very good bonded relationship. And I have very little doubt that we'll be able to get this thing finalized out. It's not overly complex. And then they'll start phase 2. But this was a very important deal for a lot of reasons. Thank you very much. I hear a helicopter.
Thank you, everybody.
I hear a helicopter. I'm going down to Louisiana. We have a totally sold out crowd in Louisiana, and hopefully the governor of Louisiana, who's not doing a very he's not doing a very good job in Louisiana. Hopefully he won't get the 50%. We'll have a runoff, and you have a nice new Republican governor of Louisiana. And I hope a lot of you are going to join us. You joining us, John? You're going to be joining us to Louisiana?
I'll be watching, sir.
Did you watch last night? Did you enjoy it?
It's a good job to watch.
Yeah. A lot of people enjoyed it, John. Have a good time, everybody.
Thank you, President. We're leaving now. Thank you.